In today's video, we're going to be going over some potentially colder temperatures in the northern half of the United States, especially for the Midwest and the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. We're also going to be talking about some snow in parts of the central Rockies, as well as for a little bit of Nebraska and South Dakota. That's going to be happening over the next 72 hours. That'll be towards the end of today's video. Before we get into it, we actually do have some weather photos. These weren't taken by her, but Carrie from the YouTube channel did actually send over some of them. She sent over a link with some of these photos, and even if you guys don't have actual photos that you took yourself, you can always send them in if something happened near you, such as a tornado, and you maybe weren't able to get a picture yourself, but somebody else had one off the internet. Then you can always send those in as well, and I might feature them. But also, of course, if you have any of your own photos, if you have, let's say, a snowstorm that happens and you take a picture of it and send that in to the email address at the bottom right over here, then of course I will also feature that as well. So she sent those in. Thank you very much to Carrie for sending those in. These were taken from northeastern Ohio mostly, but she also mentioned in the email that there was one tornado in central Pennsylvania as well. The one on the left was from Euclid High School, which is on the east side of Cleveland, and then we have another one from the Browns game on Sunday, where this one was taken closer to the center of Cleveland in downtown Cleveland, and you can see this one's mainly a funnel cloud. The one on the right was mainly a funnel cloud. And not really a touching tornado. It's not really going down to the ground. This one, I believe, is either a waterspout or a tornado. I'm not sure whether this was actually taken over, whether this tornado is over the water or not, because this town right here is actually fairly close to the ocean, or to the to Lake Erie. So that is possible that this was either a waterspout, or if it's not, then this would actually be a fairly weak tornado, depending on whether or not this bottom portion right here actually did touch down. So thank you for sending that in, and again, those were from Carrie. And so if you have any of your own, send them into the email address right here at the bottom of the screen, and I'll probably feature them. And especially if you have anything that you see with let's say fall foliage, because I know some of the leaves are starting to change color, even though it is a little bit later than normal. If you get any snow, especially in the wintertime, send those over as well. If you get any cool ice effects with the colder temperatures, send those in as well. So anything really that you want to send in, I'll feature them in the video. So let's get into it, and let's start off with the current National Weather Service page. We have some winter weather advisories in the deep shade of purple, and that's for a little bit of Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, and South Dakota. I would not be surprised if we maybe get them up into this part of South Dakota as well, because they could be dealing with maybe a little bit of snowfall, 1 or 2 inches as of right now is expected. Winter storm warnings up for central Wyoming, as well as some winter storm watches right in the middle of Wyoming as well. We have some red flag warnings in southeastern Wyoming, as well as southwestern Kansas, and then we have some wind advisories in Arizona, Nevada, California, and Utah as well. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 94 degrees in Coolidge, Arizona. The low temperature was 10 degrees 2 miles north of Walcott, Colorado. Highest rainfall report was in Tupper Lake, New York, where they got 2.1 inches of rain. No snowfall reports as of yesterday. And again, any comments or special requests, send them either down below in the comments or to my email address. So let's start talking about these colder temperatures, and we're going to take a look at the surface map, and then we'll look at the upper air map in a second. So today and tomorrow, we're going to have some rather chilly temperatures, but really only for the eastern third of the country, and especially so if you live in the Northeast. Now, today is probably going to be the colder day. Tomorrow will still be chilly, especially in the morning, but not as much as what we had for this morning. The reason is because we have cold winds coming out of the northwest. So instead of being in the nice southerly wind pattern that we've been in recently, as soon as those winds switch from the switch and move to the northwest, we're gonna start to see all that cold air, which was originally centered up in central and northern Canada. That's all gonna start to dive down into the northeast and the mid-Atlantic and the Ohio Valley. So that's why we're dealing with this shot of cold air. But you can see that if you get into the central United States, it's actually fairly warm. We have snow going on right now in the west, I believe still just for Nevada and Utah. It might go into a little bit of southernmost Idaho, but mainly in the higher elevations. But this area right now is dealing with snowfall, and for that reason, it's going to be fairly cold, especially for today and tomorrow. And this entire snow system, is going to continue to plow on further to the east. So as that happens, it'll bring this upper trough with it. And as that happens, of course, the cold air will also move further to the east. So we're finally getting into a pattern that's moving. We're no longer in that stagnant pattern where the west is dealing with very cold temperatures and the east is dealing with warm temperatures for 2, 3, or 4 weeks at a time. We're going to start to see some periods of colder temperatures, some periods of warmer temperatures, but they'll only last maybe 2, 3, or 4 days at a time. Nothing that's going to be too prolonged until maybe we get into November. Maybe things will start to kind of get a little bit more steady as we get into November, and especially so in December, I think. As we move this on to Wednesday, here's that system that I'm talking about. The low pressure center is right over here. This is when you would be dealing with snow up into areas like western South Dakota and eastern Wyoming as well. To the east, you would actually have a little bit of thunderstorm activity potentially. That would happen Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. It is rather mild compared to normal in parts of the eastern United States, really with the only exception being New Hampshire and Maine. Those two areas could be a little bit on the near normal or maybe even a little bit below average side of things, but in the rest of the eastern United States, you're going to start off your morning in the 40s or 50s. Really nothing that's going to be too bad. You see all that cold air into the 20s, even into parts of the Dakotas and Minnesota. All that cold air is headed further to the east. So behind this system, which by this point is in Iowa and Illinois, behind that system, we're going to see a bunch of cold air, and that's what's going to be moving into the eastern United States over the next few days. So this is by Thursday. Here's what it should look like on Friday. The cold air is gradually making its way further to the south, but you can see it's still very warm as you get along the east coast, still fairly mild even as you get a little bit further inland. So really, you're going to have to get either from the Great Lakes north or from basically Michigan on west to really get any of these colder temperatures where you'll finally dip down into the 30s and 20s, and that's not really going to arrive until we get into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday of next week. So here's Saturday, which is the 23rd. You can see that we have rather cold temperatures still into the Midwest and northern plains, and now you can see that back edge, or the front edge actually, of the colder air is now getting into the interior northeast. So areas like New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine will get their low temperatures into the 30s, especially as you get further north in those states. But it won't come until Sunday, which is the 24th, that we'll finally get that widespread blast of cold air, even all the way down to the coast and as far south as areas like southern Indiana, Kentucky, and southern West Virginia. So it's going to get fairly far to the south, and even more on Monday. If we look at, for just staying on Sunday for a second, you can see that we have those 30s getting all the way down again into the northeast, the lower Great Lakes, and even up into areas like Minnesota and North Dakota. But it's mainly in the mid 30s and low 30s. So we're not dealing with anything really dropping down too far below the freezing mark. If we look at for Monday, it does start to warm up, especially as you get into some of these more middle zones where you're kind of closer to the coast, or where you're just in between these two warmer and colder air masses. We still are rather cold as you get into the interior northeast, the Great Lakes, but it's not as chilly as what it was on Sunday. And then if we look at for Tuesday, same thing applies, but those colder temperatures get further to the south once again. So by Tuesday, we're still dealing with colder temperatures. It's going to be in the 30s. You're going to have an easterly breeze. So what we're going to have is a breeze coming in from the northeast like this, and that's actually what you can see popping up on the map. So if you focus in around Chicago, if you also focus in around Detroit and Cleveland, you can see that we have those two pockets of warmer temperatures, and it's because you guys are on the west facing and the south facing sides of the Great Lakes. So when the winds are coming over the slightly warmer lakes, it's blowing over that air into these areas. So if you're on the west on the east facing side of one of the Great Lakes, then you will probably be a little bit warmer than the surrounding areas, and that also applies if you're closer to the ocean. So areas that are right along the ocean will probably be a little bit warmer, just because you're having the breeze come in off the ocean as well. So there's going to be some localized effects with the temperatures on Tuesday. And if we look at for Wednesday, it actually gets colder further to the south. We have now this entire system pushing to the east, but still rather cold as you get into the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, even into the Appalachians, as well as for much of the Northeast. So a lot of people have been asking when they'll get their first frost, and for a lot of you guys, it's going to come either on Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. And if you live further to the south, let's say in this zone right here, that might come on Wednesday with your first frost. So it's going to be an interesting time, definitely. If you look at the upper air map, just to kind of show you why this is happening, this is for today, and you can see that we have a brisk northwesterly breeze which is coming in from Canada, and that's why one of the reasons why we're dealing with such cold temperatures. And even though the actual temperatures aren't really super cold in the Northeast, when you look at the feels like temperatures and the wind chills, it's actually much lower. You're looking at 5 or 6 or 7 degrees below the actual temperature, and the reason is because we have winds coming out of the northwest at about 15, 20, 25 miles per hour. So you're adding on the rather chilly breeze onto the already below normal temperatures, and of course you're going to get some fairly chilly feels like and wind chill temperatures. Now if we move this on to Thursday and Friday, you can see that we really don't have any sort of cold air mass into the eastern United States. It actually looks like a rather mild pattern, but you want to watch out for that little system up in Ontario and Quebec, because that's going to dive down by this weekend, so Saturday and Sunday of this upcoming week. This is going to dive down into the eastern United States and bring in some colder temperatures. Now, the winds are also going to be coming out of the west by this point. So, if you're on the eastern side of the Great Lakes, so for western Michigan, if you live in, let's say, the northern UP of Michigan, if you live in northeastern Ohio, northwestern Pennsylvania, you guys will probably be slightly warmer than the surrounding areas, but the rest of these spots are going to be fairly cold for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and even lingering into Wednesday and Thursday of next week. So this is going to be the time when you probably switch from shorts and a t-shirt to more of pants and a sweatshirt as we get into more of the late fall type of weather, and even as we start to head into the winter time. Now, it's going to linger on as we get into Monday, so we're still in a rather cold pattern, especially if you live in the Northeast or Ohio Valley. So you have this little trough like this, and we're dealing with winds coming in from the north and then kind of moving in from the west. So this is your wind direction over this area. So it's going to be a fairly good and chilly source of cold air for many of these areas. So this wind will be rather brisk, and so even if the temperatures are, let's say, in the 30s, let's say your actual low temperature is 37 degrees, it might feel more like 32 or 33 depending on how strong these winds are on Monday and Tuesday. And then if we look at for Wednesday, now you can see that some areas up in the Great Lakes and the interior Northeast are actually in that orange color, and normally that would signify warmer temperatures. But because we have this low pressure further to the south, if we look at the actual wind pattern, it's coming in like this. So the entire eastern third of the country is actually going to be dealing with colder temperatures, and one of the reasons is going to be because we have those winds coming in from the northeast. So that cold northeastern source of air, which is originating all the way up here is going to be diving into the east, and because of that, it will be rather chilly, and that air mass might actually linger on there for a couple days. It's going to take a while to get this system out of here because there's really nothing pushing it out there until this system comes along and pushes this one to the east. You're not really going to see any movement within that original low pressure system. Now let's start talking about the snow for parts of Wyoming, Colorado, South Dakota, and even a little bit of northwestern Nebraska as well. So this is the NAM model, the North American model, which is a fairly high resolution model, and we use it mostly for severe weather, but I do like to use it as well in the wintertime, especially with these more isolated and smaller storms where maybe a global model like the European or GFS model aren't really going to pick up on the specifics. So this can be a really good tool when you're looking at a small storm that's only going to affect a smaller area like this one will in terms of snow and in terms of the amount of area that'll actually be covered in snowfall. So this would be by about 9 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time on tomorrow morning. So we have some snow into central Wyoming, and again, that's not all high elevation snowfall. That's actually, most of these areas are actually rather flat, especially in central and eastern Wyoming, but they are high up in elevation. So it's a high area where you're actually probably 4, 5, 6,000 feet up, even though the ground is relatively flat. So even though you're not dealing with a ton of mountains into that area, more of the mountains are in the western part of Wyoming, but even though you're not in the mountains, you're still rather high up there in elevation. So it does make you colder than many surrounding areas, and that effect will allow some of that snowfall to develop into eastern Wyoming, and it'll actually start to stick on the ground probably. I'm thinking that not all of that is going to stick, so when we look at the snowfall map, not all of that is going to actually accumulate, but we will still see probably some of that stick onto the ground because it is starting to get much colder into these spots. So this entire system is going to continue to move on to the east. We are starting to see some amount of mixed precipitation by about 3 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow in areas of the Black Hills of South Dakota, also into eastern Wyoming. It's more of a heavy snow or rain, depending on where exactly you are. That snow is going to continue to spread, and it's actually going to move further to the east. So now we're in the evening hours. The sun has already set for many of these areas. It's 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Or actually, this is more of a 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're already late at night, and we're dealing with the sun already being way below the horizon. So that's going to allow for more of the snow to stick at this point, and your temperatures are going to get maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees colder, which means that some areas will be able to go from rain over to snow. So that's going to start to happen, especially in South Dakota. So overnight, this is about midnight Central Time, and you can see that we have some snow up into western South Dakota, even western Nebraska, but you'll have to get into areas like Scotts Bluff. So it's not going to be in areas that are further to the east. It's really going to be just for that northwestern corner of the state. Also for eastern Wyoming, southwestern South Dakota, dealing with some of that, some of the snowfall by this point. 3 p.m. Central Time, 3 a.m. Central Time, 2 a.m. 2 a.m. Mountain Time on Wednesday morning, and you can see that that snow is now making a good entry into the south central part of South Dakota. So we're dealing with even some of these areas that are not in the elevated spots getting in on some of the snowfall. It's mostly going to be rain, but if you live in some areas of southern South Dakota and even central South Dakota, you will be dealing with some amount of snowfall. So that's going to continue on through the early morning hours. It will weaken, so you're not going to be dealing with as much snowfall up to this point. We do also want to watch out up in North Dakota for some of that snow. So you might not have noticed this, but there is a little bit of light snow potential for central and southern North Dakota as we get into early Wednesday morning. Going to be very, very light. I'm assuming that not a lot of that is going to stick, and I would think most of it, if any winter precipitation is going to come down, it'll be mixed. So I think you'll have a mixture of rain and snow, but you might wake up, especially if you live in an area like Bismarck, North Dakota, to a little bit of flurry activity as you wake up in the morning. So it'll make for at least a nice drive to work or school in the morning, even if none of that is actually going to stick to the road or cause any travel issues. So it'll overall be a pretty nice morning. It will be chilly though, so you probably will need either a jacket or a sweatshirt in the morning. As we move this on to about 9 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday morning, mostly we're done with the snowfall in South Dakota, but in North Dakota you might be dealing with a little bit of ice precipitation. I'm not expecting a whole lot of that to accumulate up. Really, I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. And then as you get further to the south, you're mainly dealing with isolated thunderstorm activity, nothing really that strong, and also some rainfall. So overall, I think this will be a medium-sized event. You will see a little bit of snow up into the plains, so areas like South Dakota, North Dakota, and also Nebraska. But in terms of anything that's going to really accumulate, you'll have to get into maybe the southwestern corner of South Dakota. You'll also have to get into central Wyoming, really, for most of that to start accumulating. Whatever number you are on this map, so whatever amount of snowfall you have on this map, I would say cut that in half, especially if you live in South Dakota or Nebraska, because a lot of that is not going to stick to the ground. It might be showing up on here, but when we look at whether that'll actually stick to the ground, especially on pavement, it really does not look that likely as of right now. So if your area has, let's say, 5 inches on the ground on this map, maybe you just get 1-2 inches, maybe 1 or 2 inches, maybe 3 inches if you push it. But I think a lot of that is actually just going to melt upon contact. So you're going to have to really get it coming down at a good clip to get some of that to start accumulating. Once you get that first initial blanket of snowfall, then that snow will start to add up on top of it. But it is going to be tough to get that initial blanket. It will be much easier if you live in central Wyoming. So these areas, I don't think you have to cut off as much. Maybe cut off 3/4 of whatever amount. So if you have 10 inches, maybe you just get 7.5 or 8 inches out of this event. But you will get a decent amount. And again, this is not all elevated areas. There are actually some flatlands within here, and they will also get in on some of the snowfall. So this is not just a mountain event. This will also affect some areas that some of these towns in Wyoming, some of these cities in Wyoming will also be getting in on a decent amount of snowfall. So hopefully you did enjoy today's video. I tried to cover both aspects of this because there will be a little bit of snowfall into the northern plains, but I also didn't want to just cover that in today's video. I want to also get over to what's happening in the east. So if you live in this area, I hope you guys did enjoy that. If you have any questions for this snowstorm or for the cold air, just leave a comment down below. If you have any special requests or you have any weather photos that you want to send in, just leave an email to me with that email address, which is in the bottom of the description. And I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Goodbye.